So, as I said, I'm going to take you guys through step by step what I do for a Zeus operation for the 506 if I was the primary Zeus. Some of it might be a little bit boring to you. You know, hopefully it's not. No, Storm, I have no idea if you missed the Age of Wonders 3 thing or not. No clue. When I see free stuff come through Humble Bundle, I post it up. I don't generally keep track of it too much after that. So the first thing I do when I load into the server as a primary Zeus, meaning the guy that does all the building and shit like that, first thing I'm going to do is I'll log in as admin on the server, grab the mission template, so go to whatever map we're going to be using, grab the mission template, load it up, and then load into the actual server. Once I do that, the next thing I'm going to do is in chat, I'm going to type in a command that's just pound monitor space and then generally 10 being the amount of time. That little thing that you see popping up in the bottom left corner saying server load, FPS, memory used, all of that. What that command is doing is every 10 seconds it's going to pop up what is happening in terms of the server, in terms of what the server's FPS is at, what its memory usage is at, and so on. It's not really necessary for us anymore. That used to be incredibly vital for us back in the day when we didn't have as powerful a server as what we do now, because we had to, as Zeus, really work our ass off to keep the server FPS above 10. If it started getting below 10, it was really, really bad for the guys on the ground. Now we don't have that concern. We can't kill the server. We can't. But it also makes our job a little bit harder in the sense that we don't have a really good gauge as to how the performance is for guys on the ground unless we actually get out of the Zeus interface and go onto the ground ourselves. So it's a little bit more difficult because we don't have that 10 FPS thing. So while it's nice because we can't kill a server, it's also kind of bad because we don't have that number to keep in mind. Sriracha, if you type !506, that will follow the information there. So after I do the monitor thing and have that up, which like I said, it's not that important now. I more so just do it out of habit at this point. Next thing I want to do is grab my kit, which is going to consist of multiple short-range radios as well as a backpack radio. You guys will notice the only time I carry a long-range backpack radio is when I'm Zeusing. And that's primarily for the capability to talk to my other Zeus operators. As most of you guys know, we now have 3 Zeus operators per task force. We use long-range radios to communicate with each other when the other 2 Zeus operators are remote controlling, or even sometimes we're in the middle of an operation because it can be hard to hear direct comms over the radios and stuff like that, so we'll just use the radio. And we'll also listen to multiple nets. Some nights I listen to more nets than others. It just kind of depends on how I'm feeling that night. But I'm going to take you guys through how I set up my radios. If I were listening to all of the nets I sometimes will listen to, and show you how I do that, how I set them up, so on and so forth. Understand that I listen to a lot of radio nets when I Zeus. For some people, it can be a little overwhelming, completely understandably. For me, after years of doing OSUT and listening to, 4 nets with fairly consistent traffic during like day 4 of OSUT, it's gotten a lot easier for me to listen to 3, 4, 5 radio frequencies at the same time. So just keep that in mind. And let me catch up here real quick on notifications. Vert, thank you a ton, brother, for that 18-month resub. We're getting closer to that 2-year mark. And Nige, thank you as well for that 20 spot. That, again, will be going towards hooking some guys up with a free copy of the new expansion. Enemy ambushes. Yeah, absolutely, Andu. Possibly. We'll see. If anybody else has some suggestions on what type of mission they would like to see set up, put them in the chat, and we'll kind of, as a group, myself and Heckman, once he gets in here, and all of you guys, kind of make a decision on what type of mission we want to set up tonight. So again, to get back to what we were talking about in terms of radios, first thing, I carry 4 short-range radios and 1 long-range radio. So that's going to allow me to listen to 3 short-range freaks and really 2 long-range freaks, and I'll explain that here. So the first thing I'm going to do with my radio, I'm going to use Ace Interact and drop my headset. Now, the reason that I do that is when I don't have my earplugs and shit in, the radios tend to be really loud, and at the start of an operation, you guys know, while I'm sitting there waiting on everybody to load in, guys are doing their radio checks and shit, I'm normally bullshitting with you guys and so on, and I don't need everybody's fucking radios squawking in my ear super loud while I'm trying to talk to you guys at the start of an operation. So I'll drop my headset real quick just so it's a little bit quieter. That's why at the start of a mission, when I'm just standing around and everybody's loading in, my radio is always so quiet for you guys because I have the headset lowered so it's not blasting in my ear. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to hit Control P, and that's going to pop up all of my my short range radios, all 4 of them. So basically, I'm going to be listening to 3 short range radio frequencies. To do that, I need 4 radios. Essentially, you need 1 radio to talk on. That's going to be our top radio here, number 4. The top slot is always going to be the radio in your actual radio slot. The other 3 radios are going to be in your inventory. So this is going to be my talking radio. These 3 radios are going to be used to listen to the 3 nets. So the first one we're going to set up is this one. So I'm going to program into this all 3 of the short range frequencies that I'm going to be using. And again, this is only used for talking. I'm not actually listening to any frequencies on this radio. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the volume to 10, so I can't actually hear anything being transmitted through this radio. Then we'll type in our frequencies. So 31.1 is for us the company HQ net. So when I'm in an operation and I'm Task Force Commander and you hear me talking to Dagger or talking to Mike, this is the freak that I'm talking to them on. Then we're going to do 3.1, which is company net, which is where you will hear me talk to the platoon HQ elements, as well as the mortar element. And then we'll type in a platoon net. We'll go with 110 for first platoon. So that's the 3 nets that we're going to be monitoring in terms of short range. And I use my number pad keys to quickly hop between the different channels. Now, one thing that I'll also do, if I do need to potentially speak on these channels, I will set up my additional net. So we'll take 31 as my additional net and leave my primary as 31.1. So this way, if the Task Force Commander radios for Ares on 31, which Ares being me is the Zeus operator, all I have to do is hit the number 9 on my mouse and I can talk to them on short range. If I, for some reason, needed to speak on company HQ net, then I can hit the number 8 and talk to them there. If I wanted to talk on their platoon net, though, I would have to hit the number 3 on my numpad and then use the number 8 to be able to talk on that channel. But my primary and additional are going to be set up just like this, with 3.1.1 as primary, 3.1 is my additional. Is this normal for TFAR? I have no idea. I don't think we've done anything, Bad Wolf, in terms of changing TFAR so that this setup is possible to listen to multiple nets. It'd be good to see fortified position from a composition to look at, clean it up with surrounding patrols, QRF, etc. See where the most moving parts in terms of object count, garrison bugs, static weapons, position, and so on. Yeah, that's actually not too bad at all.
I would have told him too long did not read.
Oh, hello. Heckman has joined us. And actually, me and Heckman just went through all this stuff the other day. This is kind of the old school method in terms of talking on and monitoring multiple nets. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go to our second radio. We're going to go to settings. You don't want to hit set as active because set as active basically puts it into your radio slot, and that's now going to be your talking radio. This isn't what this radio is for. This radio is purely for listening. So we'll go to settings. It really doesn't matter what freak we set this to. Like I said, this is just for listening, but we'll keep in kind of the natural flow of the talking radio. So we'll say 3.1.1 for that. And then we'll set that to left ear only. So anytime someone talks on 0.1, I'm only going to hear it in my left ear. Then we'll bounce to the next one. We'll set that to 3.1. And we'll put that in my right ear. And we'll bounce to the last one. And set that to platoon net. And we'll leave that in both ears. So then we get on to our long range radio. Now, like I said earlier, the long-range radio for Zeus, for me, is primarily going to be used to communicate with the other Zeus operators. However, there are times where I will either listen to Convoy net if they're doing mounted operations, or sometimes I'll even listen to 7.0 just so you guys can hear what it sounds like when Dagger is calling in Cass and shit like that. So if I were doing that, so I've got channel 1, 7.0 set up here already. And then we're going to go down to our stereo settings. We'll put that in the left ear. And then we'll move over to channel 2. We'll set that up for our Zeus net. And set that up as right ear only. And set that as additional channel for 32. Make sure, again, that is set up in the right spot. There we go. There. Now we have 7.0 in the left ear, 32 in the right ear. Now, for long range, you know, obviously everybody's hotkeys are different. But the way for me to keep it straight, basically, is my primary channel or primary net is always going to be on the number 8, which is going to be in my left ear. That's generally going to be my lower net. My higher net is going to be on number 9, which is going to be in my right ear. So same with my long range. Instead of 8 or 9 for my short range, my long range is just adding the modifier of control. So to talk on a long range primary net, I use control 8. To talk on long range additional net, I use control 9. So now we got our radios all set up. Heckman, are you ready to build a mission?
Yay!
Woo! Fucking party! So what are you thinking, Heckman? We have one request to set up for a ambush type scenario, and then we have one request to set up basically an assault on an enemy fortified position. Which one are you feeling?
Both.
Both? You want to do both?
Not at the same time, but I'm here to learn too.
Well, why don't we do... Let's say we do a raid on an enemy fortified position, which really isn't going to matter because we don't have any blue 4 here to actually conduct the raid, so it doesn't matter if it's an assault or a raid. So we'll build an enemy fortified position, and then we'll set up an ambush situation, and also show you guys how to do a QRF for said raid position. So we'll hop into Zeus. And one of the things that you guys will catch me do fairly often when I hop into Zeus, you'll notice you hear that beep. That is TFAR disconnecting and then reconnecting when you actually get into Zeus. Majority of the time when I hit my hotkey to go into the Zeus interface, I'll reach over to my Stream Deck and mute the outbound audio for you guys so that you don't, because again, TFAR temporarily disconnects, and when you're in a channel with 60-some people and a lot of people are talking, I don't want that to blow out your guys' ears. So that's why oftentimes when I go into Zeus, your sound will all of a sudden cut out for a second, and then it'll come back, provided I remember to unmute my shit. That's why, just so you don't get your shit blown out. Yes, we do not use VoIP, but when one of us are remote controlling an AI, if we talk through it, they can hear us, and we can hear whoever, like if we're on one side of a wall and we have our guys on the other side of a wall and we're remote controlling someone, we can talk to them and they can talk to us. So where do we want to set up an enemy fortified position?
How about Altus?
Aha! See what you did there. So this looks like a little area where we could build something up. So Heckman fucking Agia Riata gonna be fucking 167204.
Right. I am hovering.
So let's say we set this up as kind of a enemy COP. We'll set a roadblock up out front. Well, actually, the guys asked about some garrisoning stuff. I guess there isn't really much area to garrison in here. We're going to need a little bit of a town setting here. Let's fly around a little bit in Zeus. Okay, that's taking too long. Here we go. The town of Rainey, just west-northwest of Agia Riata.
Roji?
This will work. It's a little bit of a pain in the dick in terms of defensive setup, considering how many different roads you have coming in here, but that's all right. We, as Zeus operators, generally don't get to pick where the area is going to be that we're going to be setting up a mission that's going to be done via the battle captains for us. They're going to tell us where the mission is going to be, so on and so forth. And actually, we have a little military compound just up here that we can set some stuff up in, and also have some of the town garrison. So we'll be able to build some military type structures around in there, and then garrison some of the town and talk about shit with that. So the first thing that I will generally do when setting up stuff like this is I'm going to go into groups, empty, and then look at my composition, see what I have to work with in terms of different stuff that I can build up, so on and so forth. One of the things I'm a very big fan of is, I believe it's in here. Yeah, so the actual FOBs and bases under the Vernai military structures. You have detailed and light. I'm always going to use the light variant because it's just got less objects. Object count is always something that we have to, keep in mind and so on. And I believe it's rudder. Yeah, rudder is the one I really like to use. You guys have seen me use this a few times in squirrel missions and stuff like that. So the first thing you want to do is obviously look around and see where you can fit something like this. You want fairly level ground. But right in here is looking fairly decent to me. And we'll drop that down. And it's going to lag your shit out for a hot second, no matter what you do, or how good your system is. So that's actually fairly decent placement there. We've got the nice opening for the road and so on. And basically the way we can make this out as is this is kind of the primary position, if you will. This is where all the troops are housed and shit like that. If we were to treat these basically like chews, or not really chews, but military housing. And then this is kind of the area where, you have an HQ element potentially working from up here. You have communications based up here. You could have a helo set on the pad, so on and so forth. So next thing I'm going to do once I place something like this down, I'm going to go through and get rid of basically all the extra shit, which again, with this being the light variant, there's not really much you need to do. Like this loudspeaker, not really needed. It doesn't add or subtract anything really. All of these generators and stuff like that, it looks cool for immersion, but at the end of the day, we got to worry about object count. So same thing with those generators, the fuel bladders, the containment barriers, these Connex boxes. Like I said, they look cool, but get rid of all the objects that aren't absolutely fucking vital. Same with these jersey barriers or K-rails, whichever you prefer to fucking call them. These little M walls here, I like to leave little stuff like this to break up the open areas when it's at a height where, you know, you can use this for legitimate cover, and it's going to create an interesting situation when they go to move into this area. Now, rather than just moving straight, you got to move left or right and so on. Who calls them K barriers? I don't know anybody that calls them K barriers. K rails is more of the, I guess, construction term for them. Jersey barriers is kind of a universal term. Same with like these walls. You know, some people will call them M walls. Some will call them military walls. So on. M walls is the term that I've always used. So then again, with these K rails here, we'll get rid of these because it's not really doing anything other than giving the guys something they have to jump over. But if I wanted to, you know, kind of cut this off, I would use more M walls or the shorter ones like back here. So overall, not too many objects in there. Heckman, you see where it is I'm talking about with the fucking...
AFIR, I'm
Okay.
going to delete those pallet jacks.
Excellent. So another thing when you put down, you know, objects like this, another thing that I'll do is once I have everything deleted that I don't want there, I'll actually go back through, highlight everything, grab it, and get it lined back up pretty much right where it was, and then I'll hold Alt and drag it all down so that I know for sure it's all on the ground. I don't have any walls floating. I don't have floating fucking HESCOs, floating buildings, anything like that, because that one looks fucking silly. Oh, we got a couple more Connex boxes here. Get rid of. Yeah, so I'll go through and lower all of that stuff down, just so we don't have anything floating. We don't have to worry about guys shooting underneath shit, so on. Yeah, pretty much. It does look empty at this point, but that's what we got to deal with. You know, obviously, if you were doing like a squad sized element, or even, you know, even really a platoon size operation on a map like Altus that does have good performance, you could leave some of that, you know, some of that immersive shit in there. So now that we have that built, the next thing I'm going to go through, you know, I'm again, even though I drug everything down, I'll generally kind of fly through here and just do one more quick look to make sure nothing's sitting up too high, everything is accessible, so on and so forth. And then I'm going to go into my Zeus interface, Zeus add remove, and I'll just do, well, no, we can do radius for now. And I'll just do like 200 meter radius, and I'm going to remove all of this stuff from Zeus, so I don't have all these little yellow fucking dots to look at. I fucking hate it. How do you prevent not being repetitive, bearing in mind with your object count? Repetitive in what way? As in the missions being repetitive? Because it's fairly difficult for missions to be repetitive, provided you're not doing the mission in the same place. You know, it's when you, even if you set up the same compound multiple times, but you put it in different places, you're going to approach it different ways. If the guys are garrisoned in different positions, covering different angles and so on, you can't approach the same thing the same way. So it's actually fairly difficult to be repetitive unless you're doing it in the exact same place, garrisoning the guys in the exact same positions and so on, which is something that's hard to do, honestly, because I could build a mission, you know, on this map and almost never work in the same area or do it the exact same way as I did it before, mostly because I can't remember how the fuck I did it before. And yes, most guys won't notice how empty necessarily the position is, purely because if you're in here and you're looking around for fucking furnishings, you're probably not doing it right. You should be looking for a threat or covering a sector or engaging a target or whatever. You don't have time to really look around like, oh, they don't have any tables or chairs in here. So once I get everything removed from Zeus, and again, that's so I don't have all the yellow dots and shit, and two, it makes it easier if you do need to remote control something in here, and say you've got a guy garrisoned in one of these little buildings here, you go to fucking control click and or control double click and remote control them, and you end up clicking on the building by accident, and then you move the goddamn building, and yeah, it causes issues. And it also helps you on performance a little bit because every object you have on your screen, each one of those yellow dots is going to be taking, you're going to be taking a hit for it basically. So next thing to do is to actually put some troops in here. So we'll use OBS militia and a squad worth of infantry. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually put down roughly a platoon worth of guys, we'll say, that are garrisoned within this. Maybe a little bit more we'll end up adding. So then, go over to our modules, AI behavior. We're going to drag these guys in a little bit closer to this area. We're going to go to garrison building instant. Hit that. 150 meter radius is fine. Inside only no. We'll say fill evenly yes, just so we get a good, decent spread so we don't have to drag quite as far. So, this is important, all right? When you are Zeusing a mission like this, and Heckman, can you add OPFOR into your Zeus real quick so you can see these guys?
Yep. Done. Oh, I added all. Damn it. God damn it.
It's alright, it doesn't add it for me, so I don't care. So, this is something that guys screw up a lot because obviously we end up doing a lot of missions with these style of buildings. These little green or tan fucking buildings are called cargo house buildings or whatever, cargo house. Notice where it garrisons every one of these guys. They're all in the exact same position in each one of these buildings, in this front right corner of the building. Now notice how close they're standing to the wall. When they spot someone through this window, they will raise their weapon and it'll clip right through that wall. Sometimes they'll engage through the wall, sometimes they don't. But this is something you got to pay attention to. Now, these little buildings, I tend to not leave very many guys inside of them because I think it looks goofy to have like one dude sitting inside the fucking building, and it's like, okay, what's that one guy doing inside the building? Like, is he having a beat off session or what's going on? So generally what I'll do is I'll start dragging these guys outside of the buildings and kind of pose them almost like they're having a fucking conversation. So like if air or drone operators or whatever come over and start looking at this through their camera, it makes a little bit more sense to have guys kind of standing outside and shit, just hanging around. Now, in terms of the guys that I'll leave in the buildings, you have to go in and actually drag them back away from the wall a little bit and get them off of that wall so they don't start clipping through and shooting guys or letting guys know that they're fucking in there. And you have to do this for every one of these little green buildings. You have to do this every time you garrison guys down into these buildings because they are going to clip through it. It doesn't matter how great your fucking map performance is, how great your server is, does not matter. You have to go through and pull all of those guys back away from those walls. Now, the same goes for these command structures. If this shutter was down right now and this guy was facing this way, you can see right now his weapon is already clipping through the fucking wall. So you've got to pull these guys back away from these walls. Same with these guys that it'll put in this corner. It'll pretty much always put somebody in this corner. You got to pull them back away from that wall. Now, another one you have to be careful with is these tall towers, and we'll go over it more when we garrison some guys over here. But there are times where you can garrison guys in these tall military towers, and if they go prone, they'll actually clip through the ceiling of the floor below them and shoot guys through the fucking floor. How often do you adjust your strategy as enemy commander based upon unexpected blue forward choices about the choices that you shouldn't know about? The only, I guess, time we change what we're doing is when we're in game, based upon what they do in game, the actions that they take in game. We can't obviously make any changes based upon their radio communications because we wouldn't be able to listen to those radio communications as the enemy commander. But if they start moving left and we have someone that's in a position to see them moving left, then we're going to react to it. We're going to have the enemy start also moving left to cut them off. Or if we, have someone in a position to see, hey, their fucking right flank is folding, then we're going to push troops up on the right flank, which is one of the things that allows us to keep our missions dynamic, is we as a Zeus operator are able to, react to what they're doing at the same time that they're reacting to what we're doing. Now, granted, the AI is still retarded, so we have our hands tied a little bit. Yeah, then, these guys on rooftops, these buildings tend to be fine. These buildings tend to be fine in terms of guys being on the rooftop. They won't generally clip through the floor, but what they will do is when they're right up against the rampart here, they will clip right through this little green wall. So you want to drag them just a couple feet back off of that wall so that if they go prone, they won't fucking lay down. And then we have our towers to worry about. So if I'm looking at this situation, this looks roughly right for the amount of, personnel we got down. It's not too heavily garrisoned in the center here. It's not too light. If you figure, these are housing units, you're going to generally sleep 2 guys per bunk or 2 guys per housing unit here. So this is roughly right. A little tiny bit light, but not too bad. So now we still need our defensive capabilities. We still need the guys up in the towers. So for that, I would drop down basically a whole nother set of these guys. Now, where guys will often screw up on this is they'll take and start dropping whole fresh new squads like this. You don't necessarily need to do that. Reason being, this is going against your unit count, basically. So now we have 2 units instead of 1. We have to, go through the whole process again or join these guys up, so on and so forth. But if I know I'm probably not going to be moving these guys in these towers, I'm not going to have them, running out of these towers to go out on the offensive. They're only here purely in a defensive manner. I can select this group, this platoon that I've already pasted down, Control C, Control V them down, boom. I've got 1 unit technically against my unit count, and it's a platoon size element. Now I can bring these guys back in, do the same thing, garrison instant, really evenly, yes. Now I've got more guys in here, and you'll see some of them get fucking killed trying to move through walls and shit. That's fine. But now I've got more guys in here basically to move around. Now I can drag these extra guys that are all back up at the front of these fucking buildings. I can drag these guys wherever the hell I want. And let's see who else we got left here out of this group. Whoop. Now, I'm not going to individually place every single one of these fucking guys because that's going to take a little too long. I don't want to be here all damn day. But basically, I drag all these guys over in this area. Now, you may wonder, why in the fuck do you set them to garrison knowing they're going to spread out all over the place and then you end up having to drag them all over anyways? I set them to garrison so that they don't take off running anywhere. Because again, I don't want these guys being mobile. I want them staying in a defensive posture. I want them maintaining their position in these towers. And when I take one of these guys and drag him over to, say, this tower and put him up in it, he's now garrisoned. He will not move from that fucking position. He won't move an inch unless I ungarrison him. Now that's the downside. Is when you're working with groups this large, if you plan on having guys ungarrison and move out of the buildings they're in and potentially go on the assault, you have to keep in mind, if you have an entire platoon like this garrisoned and you hit ungarrisoned group on one of them, it will ungarrison all of them and they'll all start coming out of the buildings. You have to be very fucking careful about that. So generally what I'll do is I'll wait to ungarrison a group until a few of them have already been killed off and we're down to, like 10, 12 guys or something. Then I'll hit ungarrison and let them start pouring out of the buildings, because guys know at this point when something is garrisoned, they won't move. So they get used to being safe standing outside of a building. Even though they know there's a guy in there, they feel safe, and they'll kind of get a little laxed and won't hold security on entry points and shit like that, because they know that guy's not going to come out the door unless it's me Zeusing. Because I'll ungarrison the fucking troops and let the guy walk out the door. Now, the only downside of that is that when you ungarrison troops, fairly often they will walk right through a fucking door, or even sometimes walk right through a wall without opening the door, or obviously without opening the wall, because they're not Superman. So that can make things kind of iffy. When that situation happens where, they just walk right through a fucking door, or walk right through a wall, and I see them fucking down a friendly because they just walked right through a door in front of them and spun and shot him or something like that, then generally that's where I'll fucking ace heal somebody as Zeus, because that's not something that should have happened to them. A guy's not going to phase through a fucking wall in reality and shoot you in the face. So once somebody drops the AI, I'll ace heal that friendly to get him back up, because that's just not right to get dropped like that. Yes, and if there is not enough free spaces for garrison, so like if I were to take this squad out here, we'll move them over here where there's nothing too close, and I hit garrison on them, it's going to tell me not enough sufficient free positions. So it put these couple of guys over here, but these guys still, even though they're out in the open, they will not move. So that works really well for roadblocks and shit like that, where, again, you want guys in a defensive posture, you don't want them running around and so on. But there's no technically buildings there, because it's just a roadblock that you built. You can use that garrison feature to throw them down there. So, as I said, I would go through, drag all these guys around, populate these towers, usually with 1 to 2 guys. And then with something like this tower here specifically, because it has pretty good eyes, pretty good lane down this road, down this approach, that's somewhere where I would go in to turrets and grab, a cord or something like that, and we'd set that up in the tower here, looking down that road. Obviously, he's looking the wrong direction. You'd spin him around, but and you don't want him sticking out the back of it. But yeah, so I'd set him down, have a 50 set up looking down this way, because this is obviously a fairly dangerous avenue of approach. You've got vehicles that can come down this way, so on, and it's got pretty damn good sight lines. So situations like that, I'll look at it and go, yeah, I'd like to have a machine gun set up in that position. Same with the top of the tower up here. You've got great sight lines. I'd probably set up a couple of fixed machine guns up here as well. But these towers are very fucking finicky in terms of setting towers up on. So if I were to take one of the tall cords and bring them up here, see how it's at an angle like that? Because it doesn't snap to the horizontal level of the building. It's following the horizontal level of the ground beneath the building. So you can see that there's a slight hill underneath this building. The angle of this is going to follow that. So when I put him up here, he's going to kind of wobble around a little bit and fall over, which is pretty fucking common for this. So getting guns set up on top of these are a pain in the ass. There's no real special trick to it or anything like that. It's just kind of trial and error, if you will. Get it on the flat ground, bring it straight up from the flat ground, and if you can, get right to that point where it switches to follow the ground directly underneath and try and drop it, and that's generally your best option. These big pedestal mounts, they will bounce around quite a bit though, so it takes some trial and error. And then the other downside, when you go to spin it, it moves it all over again. So generally what I like to do is I like to get it set up down on flat ground here, spin it to whatever sector I want it covering once it's up on the tower, drag it straight up above the tower, bring it over, lower it down like I just did, and then drop it and hope that it fucking works. No, you can't make the terrain flat. You can't deform the terrain in any way in ArmA. So it doesn't matter how much shit you put down here, if you put down flat concrete pads or whatever, it's always going to follow the terrain of the map itself. But yeah, the specify position is pretty good for that. That is this button here, but it doesn't stop the turret itself from wobbling when you place it down. It still does the exact same thing. Yeah, ArmA is all about having hope. Yeah, you can put the building perfectly vertical. The building is perfectly vertical now. This is a complete horizontal surface. But the weapon doesn't snap to the horizontal surface of the building. See, that's following the terrain, not the building. If you were to put the building exactly vertical or exactly horizontal in position to this, then the building would be going off at an angle like this. It wouldn't be standing straight up. It wouldn't be a horizontal surface. It would be angled. Yeah, that's the other option, Shadow, is to just remote control a guy and bring him up there, like have him carry the turret up there and set it up. The downside of that is sometimes as you're dragging the gun, it'll bug out and launch you the fuck off over into the middle of nowhere, or you'll just phase through the ground, which I think is what happened to you last night, right, Heckman?
I can neither confirm nor deny. But yeah, yeah, it basically took me from 3 stories high in the hospital and put me straight on the ground.
And then I drug him back up there for you because I'm a nice guy like that.
Very nice. Very
Yes.
nice guy.
And yeah, these things wobble even when you're remote controlling the guy on it. It'll still wobble around. The other option is like what Smith just said there, is using one of the shorties like this and putting them up here. But he still fucking bounces. But it is more usable, I should say, than what this is. It is an option, but you're a lot less protected, obviously, sitting up here. So yes, that is an option. So let's throw some guys down over here in this other kind of military complex. And again, we'll garrison these guys real quick. Now, obviously, I wouldn't have this many guys sitting here. Get rid of him. I wouldn't have this many guys in this building. This is fucking overkill. But when you garrison the guys, again, you want to go through and look at the position of pretty much every single person. Like, we can immediately see this guy is sticking out the goddamn window here. So we'd have to grab him and drag him inside there a little bit. These guys that are... Come on. Up against this wall, I'd drag him back just a little bit, just so his rifle and shit doesn't clip through that wall. Come on now. Get back in there. Now this guy, I would pull him back just a little bit off of those steps and have him, actually looking down the steps and so on. And then in terms of the whole group, I would want to set all these guys to stand so that hopefully even if they get shot at, they won't go prone. Sometimes they still will. It's just one of those things you got to deal with. And then again, you'd have to go through, check all of these guys, pull these guys out away from this fucking corner because we know they'll clip through that wall. Same with this guy up here by the window. We don't want him clipping through that wall. And for some reason, you get them even remotely close to these stairs, they'll fucking go prone. Even though he's set to stand, they'll go fucking prone. So we'll throw him to a couple of different poses, see if he moves. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Nope, he's going to be an asshole. So we'll get him to stand back up, pull him back over there. There you go. And for some reason, we got one of our mortar bunkers sitting out there. Weird. Oh yeah, I remember with this So I've actually done this before on this map where I took one of these IDF bunkers and I just copy and pasted a bunch of them and set them up in here where they would actually fucking go here. This is your overhead protection when you have IDF coming in. You'll generally either see HESCOs lined up on the sides like this, or you'll see like 6 of these stacked up in a row like this, and it'll have open sides so that you can run in from the sides, and you'll see just a bunch of them stacked up in a straight line like that. When you see those on bases and shit, that's what those are. Those are IDF bunkers. When you hear the siren go off, the British lady incoming, 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 and then the siren. When you hear that on base, it basically just means drop everything you're fucking doing, run to the closest set of these you can get to, sit there and wait until the all clear siren is called. While you're sitting there, they're gonna call for your fucking name and shit and get head count and everything. But anyways, that has nothing to do with Zeusing. So that in terms of garrisoning and then setting up an actual, fairly large base is how I go through it. Heckman, what do you think? Is there any changes you would make or any, anything you would do differently?
No, she looks good. Yeah, she definitely looks good. I didn't. I always wondered what the problem was with the snapping. When
Oh,
you're
for the
on.
weapons and shit?
Yeah, so that's interesting that it is the freaking terrain that's fucking you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just little workarounds you got to kind of figure out. So let's say if we wanted to set up a roadblock down here at the T intersection just south of where we have the compound set up. So the first thing I'm going to look at when I'm setting up a roadblock is, does it fucking make sense for the roadblock to be there? So here we essentially have, if we're wanting to block things from these two positions coming from the south, right, where do we want to set up a roadblock? Well, I'm not going to set up a roadblock back here because it's not necessarily blocking this avenue of approach. So I know at that point I have to have the position south of the T intersection. But we don't have any room here because we have all this tall grass. We don't really have room up here because we have the wall. So the only real option we got is right here. This is the best opening we have. So what I'll do is I'll go into groups, empty again, and I'll start looking at my different options. So we've got road checkpoints. Let's see what this medium checkpoint 2 looks like. Okay, so we've got that. That looks like complete fucking dog shit. I don't want to use that. So I'm going to get rid of that. So let's go into roadblocks and checkpoints. And I'll tell you guys, this is the one I use all the time, is the two-way reinforced. So this obviously is way too big for what we have going on here. But this is kind of my preferred checkpoint setup. So if you got something like this, like, well, it doesn't really work. It's way too fucking big for this small of an area. So that one's not going to work. What about a one-way reinforced? It's still kind of big, but maybe this is something we could make work. So let's modify this a little bit to fit into our fucking space constraints here. So the first thing I want to do is use the shift drag and kind of line this thing up a little bit. I want the bigger side on the left because that's where I've got the more room at. Kind of line this up with the road a little bit, and we'll make fine adjustments here and there too. So that's not too bad in terms of space that we're using. And I want to go through, first thing I'm going to do is get rid of all the extra shit I don't need. So this razor wire looks cool, has no fucking effect whatsoever in the game. It doesn't injure us. It, like all it does is look cool. I have no need for it. Guys are not going to fucking pay huge attention whether there is razor wire out there. All this trash, generators, burning barrel, fucking water trough, these tables and chairs, all this stuff is gonna get gotten rid of. And again, this is only for, a task force size operation. If you've only got fucking 15, 20 guys doing your mission, you can leave that kind of shit in. You don't have a concern of object count. So, and we can probably get rid of the shitters as well. Cami nets I tend to leave because I do like the fact that cami nets will actually conceal some stuff. Connex boxes I get rid of. One of the things that really drive me absolutely fucking insane is when a Zeus operator will garrison a guy inside of a Connex box and leave him there knowing that guys most likely won't check it. They'll wait until the guys walk past the Connex box, then they'll remote control them, come out of the Connex box, and shoot everybody in the ass. I can't stand that. That is a Zeus operator who plainly doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. Because at the end of the day, if you're not thinking about things logically, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And if you think about it logically, what kind of asshat who is trained or untrained is going to go hide in a Connex box in the middle of a firefight, wait until the enemy is on his position, and in fact, moving past his position and is completely surrounded, and then is going to come out guns blazing? It doesn't make any sense.
John Wick could do it.
Yeah, and also, Connex boxes don't open from the inside. Those big-ass handles that you see, like on the back of semi-trucks and stuff, that's the exact same system that is used on a Connex box. You can't open it from the inside of it. Yeah, John Wick might. I don't know. He's good, but I don't know if he's that good.
He'd get sweaty in there. It's hot in there.
Fuck yeah, it is. So sometimes, depending upon how much shit I've built, if I'm really concerned about object count, I'll get rid of these K-rails here. If I don't have a big concern, then I'll leave the K-rails, because this does legit work in terms of slowing down vehicles trying to move through this area. So if this was, farther away, at this point it's pretty close to that position. But if this was a little bit farther away, generally guys wouldn't be trying to drive off-road, which, I'm not a big fan of how often trucks are driven off-road. Guys don't really take into account the fact that, yes, while it's possible in ArmA to drive through this terrain with this truck, it's a 5-ton vehicle that you're driving up the side of a hill that's made out of sand or mud, where that truck would probably be stuck up to its axles and or flipping down the side of that fucking hill because it's just too big of a gradient and the center of gravity is too high. But yeah, I guess that's neither here nor there. So then I'm going to look at the placement of these guys, see how the angle is, and so on. Or of this position, I should say. So I'm going to look, I don't really like that this fence is just running right into the front of these Hescos. So why don't I back this up a little bit to the edge of the fence? So now it's not too bad. Our angle is a little bit off now. So adjust the angle just on this one side to match the road a little bit better and move him over so that those K-rails are actually doing their job. Now we also have to adjust this one to fit as well. We'll grab all of that stuff. Get the angle set roughly where I want it, and then drag it back to kind of fit there. Now, obviously, we still have this fucking rock wall that's just running right through the fucking center here. And this is something that if you didn't take the time to, go through, run around, check all this shit, guys won't see this, and then somebody will come running in here and be like, what the fuck? Why is there a rock wall just running into the middle of Hescos? So this position's not going to work in my book. No, I'm not okay with this fucking rock wall coming right through all of this stuff. So now I need to reposition this thing. But how am I going to reposition this? I don't have enough room to fit this. Actually, yeah, it just about fits in this little square here. That I think I would be okay with, because it's not too bad. It is running through this stuff, but you're not really going to see it. You see it a little bit right there, but I can live with that. Now we need to adjust not the whole thing. Need to adjust the K-rails here. So this one's fine. This one is fucking useless. Right? This thing isn't doing anything. So I'm going to take These two, copy, paste them. Actually, I think I only need the one, yeah. So we'll set that up so it actually is blocking a little bit of the road. And actually, if I want to go a little bit further out here, these things you can tend to overlap pretty fucking well, and it's not that noticeable. So we could set it up like that and block a little bit more of the road. Again, this is only something I would do if I'm not worried about my fucking object count. If I'm getting really high on my object count, I'm getting a little worried about it, then I would just delete all of these things. And, you know, when you have something like this added to your object count, a lot of fucking objects down there for all those M walls, all those HESCOs and shit like that. Yeah, if you were to build this in the editor, then you can use the terrain hide to hide all of this shit, and you can make this area basically as big as you want. Now, the next thing I'm going to do in a roadblock like this, and we actually got a little bit of a gap here in our HESCOs, we want to close that up. So again, just like when I place that down, I'm going to kind of zoom around here, see what's going on, and see we got a gap here in our HESCO. I don't like that. I'm going to pull this back just a little bit. Obviously, that means we need to pull this one back as well to keep them in line. And just go through, make sure we don't have huge gaps anywhere, make sure we don't have anything floating, none of the buildings or bunkers or whatever are inaccessible because they're sitting way up in the air, so on and so forth. Just make sure all of that stuff is good. And then, just like with the other stuff, I'll go through, add, remove, get rid of all of the yellow dots. Maybe the expansion improves on object count for servers? Yeah, probably not. Heckman.
Yes.
You want to man the roadblock? Or I guess garrison the roadblock, place troops in the roadblock, whatever you want to call it. And
You.
talk to guys through what you're thinking about when you're putting guys in the roadblock.
Whoa, I'm here to learn.
Yeah, well, this is learning, motherfucker.
No, learn.
I make
Learn.
this. I make the student teach.
You don't do the teach when you learn. You don't do it like that. See?
No, I don't.
Was that perfect or or nah?
I mean, I think it was probably perfect if you're fucking Willy Wonka and can understand what the hell you just said. Yes, I don't like the destroyed animation for the nets, but they look good while they're up.
Hey, they won't go down.
Yeah, till fucking A10 drops a goddamn bomb on them, or Havoc 4 drops mortars on them, or you move an object too close to them and they just fall, which is fairly common with vehicles.
Right?
That happens all the fucking time when you're putting a vehicle under a cami net. Put the vehicle down first, exactly where you want it to go, covering exactly where you want it to cover, and then drag the cami net over top of it. Don't try and put the vehicle into a camo net. It 90% of the time is going to cause the camo net to fucking get destroyed and fall flat. So yeah, set the vehicle up first, then bring the cami net in.
It made a beep. It beeped at me.
Using the garrison.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good. So now they're going to be stationary. They're not going to be able to move.
Look at that guy. He's like stuck in the HESCO. That's no buens.
Yeah, that looks painful.
Like you said, a lot of it is making sure that things are somewhat realistic. You know, the chat was talking about, you know, the blandness of removing objects. I've been doing this a long time, been playing this game on large scale, And I can tell you that if you put your heart and soul into, like, say, like one of these like office buildings, and you set yourself up and you're like, oh, I'm gonna do like a desk, and there's gonna be intel on it, and there's gonna be like money, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna attach all this shit, and then literally
Nobody
one
notices it.
person will fucking go in that room, and you gotta hope that one person is like super like nerdgasming over it.
Hmm.
So the amount of effort and the amount of server resources for that one move is just, you got to think about it. You got to pay for it, right? Now, if you're doing a special forces op and you're going to have like a team that goes into an area and they're going to clear it out, they're going to be much more appreciative. If you got, 8 guys, 10 guys, like then the devil's in the details right there, right? Then it's all gravy. But for us, like, we don't notice. We're too busy
Hmm.
trying to coordinate with one another to be like looking around for like fine details and whatnot.
Right. Yeah,
These
nobody's
goddamn
gonna notice
snakes
that
keep
shit.
keep opening these doors. But yeah, basically, yeah, I'm going through and doing the same thing, like pulling them back. This dude's like looking at a wall inside one of the buildings. You don't need to be looking at a wall or have half your body sticking through the floor.
Yeah.
So, and roadblocks are not just manned in the fortified positions. You're gonna have guys like actually, near the fucking road. So,
Hmm.
maybe these guys are out here, talking shit about their first sergeant. You never know. I don't know. Militia guys have first sergeants, probably.
They probably have dumbass platoon sergeants. I mean,
Whoa, hey there. Oh, get out of that Hesco there, bud.
so while Hecumen's doing that, one of the things I do like to do with this particular style of roadblock, where it's got the Hesco set up like this, is I'll go in and we'll add this stuff back in and actually delete this one Hesco over on the right side here. Now, the reason I'm going to delete that one is I'm going to go into units, empty, hit H barrier. Oh, I forgot to turn on that mod that I'm supposed to be checking out. God damn it. The one, yeah, where's it at? There we go. That's the one I want. But I want the 5 block. So notice how these Hescos are shorter than those ones, obviously. So what I like to do, back to where I was, thank you, is I'll set up a little vehicle position on the right side of this. And again, these, bushes being here kind of sucks, but you guys have been saying that since, what, 2002 or whatever? So I'll set that up, and then I'll go in, grab OBS Militia, we'll grab us a BTR 70, and I'll pull that vehicle up into that position. So now, even if I were to pick or set up a fucking a dishcom or something up in this tower, which you can still do, it makes sense to have a vehicle here. Sometimes I'll use a BTR, sometimes I'll place a GAZ, with a grenade launcher on it, stuff like that. Sometimes I'll even place a BMP or even potentially a tank, depending upon what type of forces we're going up against, how heavily it's supposed to be defended, so on. But just with that one little change, deleting that one set of Hesco blocks and setting up these other two, I've now, got a fairly fortified vehicle position here where it can engage pretty safely. The turret's pretty much the only thing showing. It's got a little bit of the top hull showing. It's, it's one of those where guys can still engage it fairly easily, but they need to flank this thing because if they come up from the front, it's got full field of fire all down the street, which 99% of the time, some guy is going to be right down the street here, down by these buildings, and he'll pop out around this corner with a piece of AT and try and take that shot and get shot in the fucking face. So they need to flank it and like come up through the backside of these bushes and shit and basically pop up like right next to the thing or behind the fucking thing and shoot it in the ass. So it's pretty well protected. It makes sense. It looks legit, so on. And all we had to do was remove a Hesco and place down 2 more.
Okay, I give up. I accidentally deleted all of them.
I still see them. You just
Oh yeah,
removed
because
them from Zeus.
I re-put them.
Oh.
Yeah.
We'll go back to add units. Boom. Did you already re-garrison them?
Yeah.
So
But their guns up, even though they're not set to aware.
that is odd. Only some of them are, though.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that wasn't something that I did.
No, no, I don't think so. That guy's fucking moving. Heckman, what did you do?
I I literally put the squad down and then I garrison building instant.
Heckman broke it. But no, without going through the whole process of, setting up each guy here. But that's the right thought process, is in terms of where guys are going to be. Like, you're going to have a few guys sitting out here on the road, watching shit, hanging out, bullshitting, whatever. You're going to have guys up in the towers. You're going to have guys down in here under the cami nets, just kind of hanging out. Not everybody's going to be set up on security, but not everybody's going to be, playing with their dick either. And this is another one of those things where, think about it logically. What would you be doing in that situation? What would you expect to be doing in that situation? What would you expect your guys to be doing in that situation? While it may not look all that much different, like I said, especially from a standpoint of a UAV operator or the guys up in the air, or even somebody that's, potentially up in an Overwatch position up there, who these guys don't see and they're watching these guys down here. That you're gonna notice that, you're gonna notice it is everybody just up in a defensive position, all looking at the fucking direction you came from because Zeus knows where you're coming from? Or do they have security set up in a logical position looking just down the road because that's where the biggest threat is? Do they have a couple of guys just kind of tooling around on a short little patrol, which is another thing you can do? You can take 2 or 3 guys out of this group them together, and have them just do a short little patrol around this little roadblock position, just to add a little bit of movement to the area so everybody's not just statically sitting there, so on. So what do you think, Heckman? You ready to move on to the town and garrison in the town itself?
Sounds good.
So what I'll generally do with a town is much like what I did with this compound back here, is I will just take a large group that I've already made, and oftentimes, I'll do it just like I showed you guys before. I'll just take a squad of infantry like this, and I'll place down 2 or 3 of them by holding control and hitting click. Why are those guys dropping down as green 4 instead of red 4? Oh, because I'm using elite guard. Jesus. Oh, oh, go back. So yeah, if you just place down a unit like that, it'll just be an individual unit if you just left click, as to where if I hold control and left click with them in close proximity like that, it'll place them all into one group. And that's what I want, because if I'm garrisoning this town and I want pretty much everybody to stay in their positions, in their buildings, because I want the guys an opportunity to do some good CQC and kick down some doors and so on, then I'll just make one big ass group like this, just like I did with the other compound, drag them into town here, and then garrison them up in the buildings like that. Okay. And, I'll probably end up doing that, maybe with 2 groups that size, or, it's going to be obviously dependent upon the size of the town. If I don't want all of the guys staying in the buildings, I want some guys that are going to be mobile and be able to run around and shit. Obviously, I'll use a smaller group. And I won't put down like a whole platoon. I'll put down like maybe one squad in an area and garrison them, knowing that once the gunfight kicks off, I'm going to ungarrison those guys and have them come out of the buildings. But majority of the time, even though it's more realistic to have the guys come out of the buildings and get in the fight, I tend to leave guys garrisoned the majority of the time, just again, so the guys get the experience of getting to go in the building and do some CQC and so on. With exception to, like I said, when the fight's getting down towards the end, there's, you know, maybe a squad or so of guys left, then I'll ungarrison and let them have some fun. I'm not sure if this is the real Heckman. Heckman, what have you done with my Heckman?
It is me, Heckman.
So yeah, in terms of garrisoning the town, I mean, it's just like anything else we garrison. It's not just a matter of, okay, click the button, boom, they're garrisoned. All right, your job is done. You know, some people will do it that way. I don't like that. You know, I like to go through and look at every single individual I've garrisoned and make sure they're good. Like this guy here, I would be concerned about this guy in the window because there's a good chance if, say, they were to approach from the east here, there's a chance he clips through this fucking wall and shoots him through the wall. So I'm going to pull him off that wall. But at the same time, I'm going to take into account, you know, it really makes sense to have this one guy in this little shack all by himself. Not really. I mean, yeah, you can leave them in there so guys get the experience of opening this building and dropping them. But at the same time, it's a fucking 20 square foot building. There's no real CQC there. It's, you're not clearing corners and stuff per se. One guy can clear this fucking building by looking in the door or the window. So like a guy like this, I'm just gonna pull him outside and have him standing out front and go grab a buddy for him and have him standing out here with him and maybe grab this guy and have the three of them just standing outside. And then like these guys in the shack, sure, maybe they're fucking, I don't know, maybe they're in there fucking, I don't know, but it's a little bit, you know, better than having one guy in this little shack. In terms of the buildings themselves, you know, I just want to look at their placement, make sure they're not too close to walls and shit like that again, so they're not clipping through stuff. And like I said, just kind of look at everything from a logical standpoint. Does it make sense for that guy to be there? You know, would he have someone else with him, which majority of the time is going to be yes. So I like to try to put 2 guys per building minimum. Some guys I'll still only do 1, but majority of the time I like to have 2 guys per building. And so on. Just kind of, like I said, fly around the city, taking a look at them, seeing their positions, whether or not it makes sense, so on and so forth. Would I want my guys positioned there? Stuff like that. So it seems fairly simple, right? I mean, it seems pretty common sense to like, yeah, okay, well, you would want to, you know, make sure that they're not clipping through walls and stuff like that. But it takes time to do that, especially if you're looking at a town twice this size and you've got, you know, 3 platoons worth of infantry garrisoned in the town. It takes time to do that. And that's something I didn't mention at the start of this. You know, when I build a mission for a task force size element, I'm generally in the server building the mission 2 to 3 hours ahead of the actual start of them loading in. So I'll load into the server at, you know, roughly 1700, 1800 and start building the mission. Now, I'm always done with the mission long before that. I usually have a solid 45 minutes or so of not having to do anything because I'm already done with the mission. But at the same time, if there is problems, if I'm having issues with whatever, getting guns to place in the right position, there starts to be a server problem, whatever, I've got time to either fix it or replace it. If I were to load into the server fucking 45 minutes ahead of time, yeah, I could build a mission in 45 minutes, but it's not going to be anywhere near as high a quality as what I would like, because the longer I can spend sitting here looking at these positions and say, okay, yeah, that's not too bad. You know, if these guys were really trying to defend this area, they would probably have something set up in Overwatch positions. So I would come look at like this hilltop over here, and, you know, maybe I would set up a BMP sitting up over on this hilltop, kind of overwatching the approach into the town from down here. And if I were to just, throw this together and quickly garrison troops, I don't have time to look around at these areas and say, oh yeah, I could set up a fucking BMP there in Overwatch position and, set up a cami net over top of them. And now if, any of them come in from down in this valley, this BMP's got pretty damn good Overwatch in this entire fucking area. And this thing is going to be very, very goddamn dangerous, especially if they don't see it on the approach and they don't know it's there until it opens up. Because if this thing fires first, you're going to have a bad day. Somebody's getting fucked up by this BMP. Same with over here. We have a bunch of trees and shit in the way here, but we have a position right here that's got pretty good Overwatch there that we could set up and kind of have a crossfire with that BMP over here, at least out at distance. So maybe we could set another vehicle up here. You could set up a MBT or something in this position, something with longer range, because that's a long fucking ways to reach out there. Granted, the BMP still got great range, but set up a tank up here. And then let's take into account, okay, what about AA? What about air defenses? Do these guys have any? If they do, where would they set it up? Okay, the common mistake that is made when it comes to AA is we'll go into our turrets here. Actually, these guys don't have Iglet turrets. Let me see who we got here for Iglet turrets. I know the Russians all fucking have them. Okay, and again, these guys, this faction doesn't have the Iglet turrets, but I'm just using them as an example. This is for any type of AA, whether it be Iglas, Tunguskas, Shilkas, fucking full-on SAM sites, whatever. Okay, the common mistake guys are going to make when it comes to AA is we'll take our Iglet turret here, and they're going to say, all right, this is our area that we really want protected. Let's place Iglet turret down there, and then, we'll place one in the main compound here too, because that's really what we want to protect. Okay, that's true. That's what you want to protect. But let's think about this again from a logical standpoint. If I'm the enemy commander, do I want enemy air assets literally on top of my fucking AO before my air is able to get to them? No, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, when we talk about an AA net, a net spreads farther than what the net is trying to fucking cover. Now, while this does, yes, have a range of more than a few hundred meters, still, you want the net to be cast farther than what you're trying to protect. So for AA, when I set it up, my AA is going to consist of a net. So I'm going to have shit way out here to the south. I'm going to have one way out here on this fucking hilltop. I'm going to have one way out here on this hilltop. I'm going to have one way back here on this fucking hilltop. So on. I'm going to set up a perimeter of AA around the area. I'm not going to put it right in the center of my AO. It doesn't make any sense. I'm going to set it up around my AO to create, like I said, a fucking perimeter of AA. So that way, no matter what direction the enemy tries to come in from, they run into the AA first. If it's some type of air asset, obviously. So I'm going to set up a perimeter. And as they're trying to come in and get recon or whatever on this area, this AA locks them up. Obviously, they're still going to be able to see this stuff, but this AA is able to lock them up before they're fucking right over top of my AO and able to drop bombs and shit like that on my stuff. No, they got to worry about missiles flying at them before they even get into the AO. That makes a lot more sense logically. We have a nice clearing set up in a couple of these areas. We could have AA set up there. When setting up stuff like this, like Iglas, like obviously I'm not going to set up an Igla right in this position because it's got a bunch of trees and shit around it. Again, use a little bit of common sense there. You want it in a clearing where it's got good, clear view around the area. But say this area right in here, this has got pretty good fucking eyes all out around that area. I could easily set up a fucking Tunguska or a Shilka or something like that right here on this ridge line. And now anything that's out in that fucking area is going to be seen by that. And I've got good overwatch on my entire area AO. Same as if they try and come up over here. It's not got quite as good a view because of the trees, but it's got a pretty good window right here. Obviously, its field of view is going to get larger the farther away it is. So shit like that, when you're setting up AA, like you want to take that into account. You know, set up an actual fucking perimeter with your AA. It makes more sense to me. Hopefully it makes more sense to you guys. And you know, it's one of those, like, if you have your AA right in the center of the AO here, if that's deemed a situation where you know, we have to eliminate that threat, if it's the ground assets, how long is it going to take us to fight to this position before we can take out this AA and give us the capability to use our air assets? Probably quite a while. If it's something where it doesn't have enough range to the point that we can task the A-10 with taking it out or something, and they have to do high-level bomb drop or something like that, okay, they drop a bomb on it. How much of the shit inside this compound does that bomb destroy and now take away from the fun of the infantry because the A-10 just fucking carpet bombed everything? If the stuff is out here, the infantry can get to it a little bit quicker and be able to deal with that threat. Obviously, the stuff back here, not so much. But you can potentially, you know, circle around and take this stuff. Or air can deal with this stuff because it's outside of the fucking AO that the infantry are going to be dealing with. We don't have to worry about them blowing up stuff that we want to fucking blow up, so on. So yeah, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Yeah, exactly. Basically, you need to know what your weapon platforms are capable of doing. And also, Dreadnought, thank you for the 2-month resub. Always appreciated, bud. So Heckman, what do you think so far? Have you learned anything? I think Heckman's dead. He gave up. No?
I have.
Didn't you have questions or something you wanted to ask me about Zeus shit? Do you even remember what they were?
Well, most of the Zeus stuff, that the questions I had were like shortcuts, keybinds to do stuff. Like if you put down like a BTR and you want to take over the, I know you can go in and just like RC on it, period, and then just switch to the driver. But if it's like a helo, like you can pick a specific one. Like how do you look at the crew of said and then stuff like that.
If so, go to that BTR we got set up at the roadblock that we set out there. So if you click on the red diamond at the top, that'll highlight the 2 crew members. You'll have the driver with the wheel, obviously, and then the gunner with the crosshair. And then you just mouse over the driver's wheel, hold control, left control, and double left click. And that's how you fucking pick individual crew members. And there's another cool trick with highlighting specific things that I'll show you guys here in a second in terms of setting up a QRF. So I'm going to actually delete some of this stuff that's out here. Increasing difficulty. How do you keep the mission challenging both in enemy numbers but also enemy intelligence, and also keep it fun, satisfying to accomplish? There's no real set formula in terms of, you know, you want to keep casualties below this number, but keep, you know, EKIA above this number to make sure guys have fun, but they're still being challenged. There's no set formula. That's one of the reasons that we listen as Zeus operators, why we listen to PlatoonNet. It's in no way, shape, or form to gather intelligence for us to use against them. We listen to PlatoonNet purely to listen to the voices of the platoon HQ elements and the squad leaders. and we have to be, I don't know, semi psychiatrist in that situation where we have to be able to listen to those guys' voices and hear, do they sound bored? Do they sound excited? Do they sound defeated? Do they sound like they want to be there? Do they, do they have a lot of fucking gung ho and they want to keep getting after it? So on. You have to kind of listen to their tone of voice and how they're talking and so on, and just kind of make a decision based off of that of, do they want more? Do I need to push them harder? Do I need to back off a little bit because, such and such squad just sounds like he's completely defeated. He's tired of getting his shit kicked in. Do I need to back off of that flank and put a little bit more pressure on the left flank because the other squad sounds bored and, he's got nothing to do, so on. We really have to pay attention to those communications and how those guys talk to each other. Yes and no, Hardman, in terms of sending, armor at them after they're black on AT. Uh, does it make sense for more armor to show up? Are they black on AT because they've just killed a fuck ton of armor? They've taken out like fucking 15 pieces of armor and that's why they're black on AT. Are they black on AT because they've missed a fuck ton of shots? Are they black on AT because they've gotten quite a few KIAs for whatever reason? Sending more armor isn't necessarily bad in most of those situations. That's what we have air assets for. And me and Heckman were talking about, well, mostly Heckman was talking about this with Drum last night. Back in the day, we had a great connection, especially with the A10. Granted, that was because Coke, who was our pilot, he hung out with us quite a bit, especially us in 1-4. We were really good friends with Coke, and he was our pilot. He was our task force's pilot, and it was like a standing competition between us to see who could kill more armor every night. Because again, we on average went up against like 18 fucking pieces of armor. But that was the thing, is when we were black on AT, because we didn't really pick up enemy AT. I never really, on very, very rare occasions, gave my CCMTs clearance to pick up enemy AT. I didn't give a shit if the rifle squads were running around with AT. That's not my problem. They're not my squads. But my guys almost never picked up enemy AT because I liked that connection with our supporting assets. And I know Heckman does as well, where when we were black on AT and we had no options and there's a fucking BMP that had, our entire platoon pinned down and Heckman's coming across the radio saying Thunder's inbound and he hits that fucker with a Maverick, that makes our night. Like that, we just got our asses saved by the A10. And I couldn't tell you how many times in a task force debrief we were thanking Thunder or even Warlord for saving our ass from a piece of armor, or the night we did that ambush when Warlord saved our ass on the extract, just tearing guys up with that fucking cannon. They saved us many a times. And that's, one, because we went up against so much armor, so we would be black on AT. But I liked it. It was a nice bond to have with our supporting assets. And I know, Heckman, you agree.
Oh, 100%. I was actually just having this conversation this morning with Captain Drumheller. It Man, we started it last night because I was talking. I was like, man, I'm just like so sick of like picking up enemy armor and seeing like you get to the end of the task force and there's like 7 guys running around with
Yeah.
RPGs on their fucking back. I'm like, we didn't do it. Like even at the rifle squads, they didn't do it. It was only if it was like
Yeah, it
absolutely
was
a
an
hundred
emergency.
percent. Yeah, but we have that connection to air and the connection to one another as well. Like that's another thing to think about, right? It's like if you blow your fucking AT4, taking out like BTR, then you have to rely on your other team, and if they use theirs, then you have to rely on another squad. It's that connection is what makes what we do special. Without that connection, then what the hell are we doing? We're just like kind of just floating around doing our own thing. And I 100% agree. And missions like this, there was plenty of times plenty of times where we like there's actually one in one of my videos, the how to how to break a platoon sergeant, where you can hear First Sergeant Brewer, I believe you, I don't know, PFC at the time, you're a little baby, but you
On
you
the
were
bridge
like
mission, I
I
think it
am
was Corporal.
100% black on AT. We are black on AT, and then literally 2 seconds later, you hear Lieutenant Avery on the radio, and he's just like, "We got reports of 5 times enemy armor crossing."
Hmm.
Like maybe that's a touch excessive.
Yeah, that's an
You know,
extreme example of how bad Zeusing can be done because they didn't give a fuck about how we were doing morale wise. They didn't give a shit that we were defeated at that point. I mean, to be fair, we were pretty much defeated at the very start of it when 1-1's like, we have a tank directly in front of us.
yeah. So it's when your job as Zeus is to is just like First Sergeant says, it's about maintaining the level of enjoyment for everybody. And in missions, sometimes it is absolutely 100% like great to get kicked in the fucking teeth. Just get the shit rammed down your throat. For us, it sucked because it happened
Every
for
night.
about a 5 to 6 month stretch of just anal rapage. But, every now and then, you shouldn't go into a mission just instantly thinking, hey, this is designed for me to win, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get, my shooty shoots, and then we're just going to, like, no, you should always have that threat that you will fucking lose and you will get, fucking just straight up destroyed
Hmm.
because multiple KIAs. It happens, and those moments are what make ArmA great too.
Yeah, the like especially with that bridge mission, to basically relay to you guys, I mean, how close our connection really was with air. Um, Coke, who again was our pilot after the operation, came and hang out with us as he did after every operation with us. And he was telling us like, guys, I tried. I was nonstop asking for permission to blow up the bridge. He's like, right at the end, if it hadn't stopped, he's like, I was ready to just blow up the bridge anyways and just deal with the consequences. Like he was ready to lose his job as an A10 pilot to just take out the bridge so it would stop and we wouldn't have to, keep dealing with it. Because he just felt so bad for us on the ground. And he was doing everything he possibly could to try and get clearance to just drop bombs on the bridge. Um, and that meant a lot to us, especially us in 1-4, because, again, we're the fucking armor guys. Everybody's, kind of relying on us. And we were black on AT within the first 5 minutes of the operation. We were out of rockets. And we felt fucking powerless. Like I'm radioing a person like, hey man, bro, I'm stealing fucking AT4s from your truck. And he's like, take all of them. Take everything you fucking need. Take whatever is in that truck. And, we're out there as the fucking, big badass armor killing weapons guys. And we're firing fucking AT4s because it's all we got left. And to know though that Coke was up there in the air, I mean, fighting as hard as he could for us, like that meant a lot to us. Coke eventually went to reserves, and then he stepped away from ArmA not too long ago. Well, actually, he left the unit, and then he's since stepped away from ArmA in terms of doing big, large scale stuff like this. But the next thing I want to set up for you guys or show you guys in terms of ambush, when you're the enemy ambushing ambushing our guys. One, it's incredibly fucking difficult to do because of our air assets and how well they're able to spot and find targets. Very, very fucking difficult to do. So the first thing is you can't set up an ambush in this type of terrain. It's just too big, flat, open. There's nowhere to fucking hide, so on. So as the battle captains, the guys that actually design where the mission is going to be and so on, this is not an area where you're going to try and set up an ambush. provided the battle captain is smart. What you're going to do is you're going to kind of look around the map and set up something maybe in this area over here in like 140216, kind of along this roadway where you've got a little bit more tree cover. You've got some deflate you can kind of work with, so on. Basically, you want to look at areas where you have deflate that you can use, that you can put between your guys and what would be our enemy, which is the blue four. You want to be able to hide your guys fairly close to where they're going to be, and so on. So especially with an ambush scenario, we're going to know the route they're taking. That's kind of the idea of a fucking ambush, is you know where they're going. So we're going to know that kind of stuff ahead of time. And we're going to try and hide our guys as best we can. So you would take a squad worth of infantry, and if, they're moving down that road, you're going to set them up down in a position like this, and you're going to get down at ground level and look at these guys and see what the sight lines are from down here on the ground, and see if guys up here on the road are potentially going to see them. And if they are, you're going to want to move them around until they are in defilade of the road, so that guys up there can't see them. And maybe you'll fucking tell them to go prone, so it's even harder to see them, which does increase your workload as a Zeus, because once they get in this area, you got to turn around, tell these guys to stand up, go to running, and start moving themselves up to that area so that they can engage. Now, one of the other difficult things in this is once the engagement starts, the AI tends to not like to move sometimes, or you'll issue an order for them to move, say, out there and to the southeast, and they'll start running fucking northwest, the complete opposite direction. Some maps are just not good for AI moving around and so on. The easiest way to get around that is what you guys have seen me do, which is splitting the group. So if I hold control, mouse over the diamond, click, and just drag, and you'll see that the group suddenly splits up. Then I can highlight all these guys, tell them to move over in that direction, and just kind of move the little chevrons around so they're not all stacking up on top of each other. And they'll move. I mean, they will haul ass. And they will not stop moving towards that objective. They'll stop and engage a little bit here and there, but they won't stop and just lay down or start running in the opposite direction and so on, which is great. The problem is, however, if the group were bigger than a squad, if you're talking about 2-3 squads, a platoon size element that you're sending as one group, and then you try to split that group, it's going to crash your machine. Or not crash your machine, but crash your game. So if you've got 15, 30 guys in one group, so if I were to take all these guys and group them back up on this guy, so if this group consisted of, 10, 20 more fucking guys, and I tried to do that, I tried to fucking ungroup them like that, it'll crash out your game to the fucking desktop. It's a known issue. There's nothing you can do to combat it other than don't ungroup a group that large. It doesn't matter how good your fucking PC is, how bad it is, it'll crash you. So you have to be very careful about breaking groups like that. You also have to keep in mind, when you ungroup like that, it adds to your unit count. So if you have a cap on the amount of units you can spawn, excuse me, then it's going to add to that unit cap. And eventually you reach that unit cap, and Zeus won't let you fucking spawn any more personnel from that unit, if you will. So if you're using Red 4 or OPFOR, and you hit that unit cap, you can't spawn any more OPFOR. Generally, it'll let you go in and spawn more Green 4, but sometimes it won't. It's kind of finicky. Yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of ambush. The main thing with ambush is, you want to set up an ambush just like you would in real life. You want your forces to have good cover to hide behind, with someone or something that's still got eyes on them. So even like the ambush I set up last week for Havoc 2's platoon training, I had that one guy that had eyes on him moving into the kill zone, and I purposely set him to hold fire so the AI wouldn't engage, even though the AI later on still fucked it up. But anytime I'm going to set something up like that, where I'm going to say, oh, well, such and such had eyes on you, I'm going to have a character, an AI down that does legitimate have eyes on them. Same with like mortars. When you guys see me work mortars in the artillery computer and you hear me talking to the other Zeus operator, telling them, you know, hey, do you got eyes on, spot my rounds, so on. I work enemy mortars the exact same way our friendly mortars work. You have to have someone or something to spot those rounds. And if I'm dropping mortars, I'm going to have one of my Zeus operators remote controlling a guy with eyes on those impacts telling me how I need to adjust my rounds. The only time I won't do that is when I'm doing what I call my Michael Bay mortars, which I've shown you guys before, which is, you know, going into the modules, fire support, and the 82 millimeter mortar module. And when I do these mortars, like say this group of OPFOR were actually friendlies, I'm not going to drop a fucking mortar directly on top of them. Okay, I hate that shit. That's what our Zeus operators used to do to us. What I'm going to do is, if they were stationary, I'm going to set mortars like this, like all around them, to the point like somebody might take a light injury or something like that, but it's not going to be anything life-threatening. It's probably not going to knock anybody out. It's purely there for the experience of having the fucking ground rumble, the loud explosions, so on. Holy fuck, we got mortars. I like to do this especially on extracts because it just makes the extract seem that much cooler. But yeah, like if these guys were extracting towards that COP and they had mortars coming in like this, that'd be a pretty fucking cool experience to have this huge mortar barrage going on chasing your ass. And that's why I call them Michael Bay mortars. In terms of a way around the unit cap, from what I understand, yes, there is a way around the unit cap, but it can cause some issues server side sometimes, and it's not really something that I would want to take chances with. Now, the next thing I want to show you guys how to set up is a Convoy. Is this something that that kind of came up Sunday, and guys have difficulties with it and so on. It's not easy to do, and there's a few little tips and tricks, and again, Ron has a video on it on his YouTube, but I want to take you guys through how I would set up a Convoy. So first thing I want to take into account is, what is my lead Vic going to be? I like to do a tracked vehicle for the lead Vic, because when you're setting up a Convoy, one tracked vehicle is your best bet. If you have more than one tracked vehicle, the Convoy tends to go all fucking wonky and have problems. So I like to do one tracked vehicle, and if I'm going to have a tracked vehicle, that means it's generally going to be the heaviest armor that I have. So I'm going to put that up as the lead vehicle. So for this one, we'll use a BMP2. We'll set him up there, make sure he's facing down the road there. How severely do you punish players when you control AI? I don't. It's not my job as a Zeus to punish players. And I hate people that use that fucking term or think that it is their responsibility to punish. You're not a parent. You're there to make sure everybody has fun. Now, if it makes sense that I'm remote controlling an AI and someone's breaching a room, and one guy goes right and number two should have gone left and looked towards the corner I was in, but they both go right, yes, I'm going to shoot the guy in the back. That's not, in that situation, to me, that's not punishment. That's what would happen in that scenario because of the mistake that he made. But if guys say move left, when for me in an overhead view it's very fucking clear that they should have moved right, I'm not going to drop a mortar on them because you were a dumbass and went left and should have went right. It doesn't make any sense. Now, in terms of an RPG, I use an RPG just like I would any other weapon system. I'll generally give them a chance, so I'll fire an RPG in their general direction. I won't usually aim directly for them, but I have a really bad habit of hitting people accidentally with RPGs. And then I'll reload and maybe send another round at them without aiming directly in their area. And then a third round will usually land pretty close or right on the target. But again, that's dependent upon the situation and the fact that fairly often I'll accidentally hit people with fucking RPGs because I'm just winging a shot out there and it's like, okay, it goes where it goes. The vast majority of the time, honestly, when I hit someone with an RPG, it's accidental. And that's no bullshit. I accidentally hit people with RPGs much more often than I purposely hit them. Because I can't aim for shit with those things. So to continue setting up the convoy here. So if we have our lead Vic, our BMP set up front here, first thing I'm going to do is set them to a file formation. I'm going to set him to limited speed. It doesn't really matter if he's careless or aware or whatever. Do keep in mind, though, if you set guys to careless, they're going to pop out of hatches and shit like that. So then we have that guy set up. So next, let's get a couple of BTRs set up as 2 and 3. And then we'll grab a couple of troop transports. I'll just copy and paste those down. You like how they change colors because it's a custom faction. And then let's grab a GAZ set up here in the back, and we'll grab another GAZ set up here like this, and one more set up like this. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, again, because we have this BMP set up in a file up front here, I'm going to control drag and just put them as part of the group. I'm just going to attach them to the vehicle directly in front of them. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to hop into this lead Vic, hop into the driver's position, actually fire the thing up, and I'm going to start him rolling, and I'm going to set his speed limiter. Or try to set his speed limiter here. Alright, so now we've got it set at 8K. Alright, that'll be fine for this purpose. Generally for enemy convoys and shit, I'll tend to set their speed limiter around 20, 25 kph. So now that's set. Another thing to keep in mind here. Yes, delete key is the speed limiter. You can only have one vehicle with a speed limiter set, so you only want to set that on your lead Vic. Because of the formation that they're in, these guys are never going to pass that lead Vic while they're traveling. So you always set the speed limiter on your lead Vic. Now, we've got the BMP up front, we got a couple of APCs, we got some gun trucks, so on. We got these troop transports. Now we need to populate these troop transports. So what I'll do is I'll grab a squad of guys there, copy, paste. All right, so obviously you can fit a little bit more than a squad in these trucks, but for this purpose, I'm just going to throw a squad in each one. So I'm going to take the diamond, drag him into that truck. Now notice, when I hit that diamond, it selects only the guys in the back of the truck, or basically the troops that we loaded into the truck. It's not selecting the driver of the truck. It's only selecting the group. That's important. All right, so I'm going to throw those guys in there, those guys in there. Also, you can look at your unit thing over here and see that they're all passengers. That's what just the little seat is. So I can just click on that. So, because remember, the drivers of the trucks are actually in this group. See, that highlights the drivers of each one of the trucks. So what I'm going to do here real quick is I'll tell this convoy to roll over to this area here. Obviously, I'm not going to let them roll that whole way because it's a pretty long distance. But just to see, so you guys can see them rolling, basically. Yes and no, Andu, in terms of taking control of an AI when I see an opportunity. I will take control of an AI when I see an opportunity if that AI would have the capability of seeing that opportunity. I will not fucking cheat and use my Zeus perspective to take advantage of an opportunity that the enemy would have no idea is there because they can't actually see that action going down. I have to have some enemy combatant somewhere that has eyes on that mistake being made and can relay that information to whoever it is I'm remote controlling. If they don't, then I'm not going to take advantage of it because it's not right. There's no way they would know that's happening. So, like in a situation where if I know that Blue Force is flanking right because I can see it in Zeus, but they're flanking behind Defilade and none of my enemy units have eyes on the backside of that Defilade, then I'm not going to send troops over there because I don't know that they're moving that way. So yeah, here you can see that, you know, everything's rolling. Obviously it's going slow because we have the speed limiter set at 8K. But you can see everything's rolling fine. Altus is a good map for this because the road layout, the AI will actually follow the roads and stuff like that. Depending on your map, that's going to fucking change. You know, this is something that you have to do ahead of time. You have to practice this. It's always a better idea to practice this in the fucking server you're gonna be using and not in goddamn Eden. I cannot stress that enough. Everything you're doing, you need to set it up, practice it, and make sure it works on the fucking server. Because I guarantee you, you can have a convoy like this set up looking all fucking beautiful in Eden Editor, and then you go try it on the server and it completely shits the bed because of whatever, because just it doesn't agree with the server for whatever reason. Now you're fucked, and oh, by the way, you waited to start building the mission until 45 minutes in, and now you have no idea what the fuck you're gonna do because you've got 20 minutes to build a mission for, 60 guys. So again, do the shit on the server and make sure you got plenty of time to come up with an alternative if whatever it is you're doing just doesn't work. So next thing we're gonna do is if the convoy gets eyes on enemies, so like say we had a bunch of friendlies set up out here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the convoy right here because we'll say that they've seen him. I'm going to split this truck off, have him drive over there, split this truck off, have him drive over there, split that truck off, and have him drive over there. Okay, and he's going to run into the back of him because the AI says fuck you. But basically along those lines, we'll step him to the side a little bit there. And you have to make little fucking adjustments like that all the goddamn time. So now we've got the trucks off to the side. This diamond here, again, now it's got everybody in it, okay, because I split them out of the group. Keep that in mind. If you want your driver to stay in the truck, then you need to go through and select, hold control, and click each one of the individual guys and hit golf, and then start running them away. God damn it, I didn't want to select them. Or the truck, I wanted to select them. So yeah. Then we split that off like that, run them off, and now the driver is still in the truck. We can have him drive away. Same thing for this situation. So I want that guy, all of these fuckers here, to dismount, ungroup him, send these guys out there. Same thing with this truck. Right, so basically we're having them dismount just like what we would have, or what we would do, ourselves in terms of dismounting. So we got them dismounted, we'll wait for them to clear out of the way of the truck, and then we'll move the trucks away, so on. Once they get out of the way of all of these vehicles, then we could start moving them up, or we could split them off and have, these vehicles start moving off to the sides and shit like that, and so on. But you can move guys as you see fit, see how many friendlies they end up running over, shit like that. But that's one of the things that I guess gets screwed up fairly often is when guys have a convoy set up like this, they won't split off their troop transports, their soft vehicles, and have them start unloading. They'll just have them keep driving straight on in with the rest of their convoy and have all the guys in the back just start getting fucking annihilated. Even as they hop out of the back of the truck, they just keep getting torn up. As where in reality, if this was, a convoy and they seen enemy forces out there and started engaging, this BMP would be providing fucking all kinds of covering fire along with these BTRs while these trucks moved into a secure position. Like in this, obviously they're out in the open here. I would bring them back in behind concealment or defilade and then unload them. And then you would push forward just like we normally would. So things like that where it looks really stupid for us on the ground, like, why the fuck are they just driving in, letting us shoot them? I mean, it is stupid. It looks silly to those of us that know what we're doing in terms of what we would do in that situation. So that's where we as a Zeus operator have to take that into account. You know, is that something I would do? Is that something I would be okay with my guys doing? Just dismounting in the open like that, or not dismounting at all and having no weapon system on their truck and just driving straight into enemy machine gun fire? No, it doesn't make any sense. You're going to stop those soft skinned vehicles, get them behind cover or concealment, unload the infantry so they can actually get their weapon in the fight, and then push forward from there. And just like with our stuff, we're going to push the infantry in front of the vehicles. These guys obviously have much more engagement range than what these guys do with all these AKs. So we're going to keep the BMP and stuff like that, you know, out in here, and the BTRs are going to be further away, or BMPs and BTRs are going to be further away to provide covering fire. You know, so it makes sense from a logical standpoint, but oftentimes guys don't fucking think about it that way. And yes, we finally have aliens. Rum has made his arrival along with the aliens. So what other hotkeys were you curious about, Heckman?
Oh boy. Well, that was a big one. Have you noticed that if you look at the driver of the BMP that he's like flipping the bird on both hands?
Like inside?
Yeah. If you like take your camera and go inside and look at his hands. And I wonder if that's like just like an Easter egg because
Huh.
they don't have modeled.
I cannot say I ever noticed that before.
So yeah, that's about it.
I'm trying to
He
think.
didn't call nothing Murph. He just reads stuff on Reddit, and then he says it like it's his own original thoughts. Don't let him fool you.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Fuck did you say to me?
Oh, another good thing for setting up missions is the copy mission SQF. So if you have units placed down, a bunch of objects placed down, like defensive barriers and shit like that, and you build your mission a couple of days ahead of time, and then want to set it back up later. So you take that copy mission SQF module and place that down. And for us, we never want to copy the entire map generally, because if you're building the mission on our server a day ahead of time and you copy everything on the map, you're going to copy everything we have at base as well. And then when you paste down the SQF, it's going to repaste all that shit down, and it's going to be a bunch of crazy explosions and so on. So the range, you'll set up for like 2 clicks or something like that. Basically, whatever your our AO is, you're going to want to include AI, include empty vehicles, include objects, markers. You shouldn't be placing down markers anyways, generally, so it's not a big deal. And then you just hit OK, and it's going to come up with that big ass line of code, basically, that you're going to go through, click, drag, highlight all of this, and then hit Control C, and then Control V, or paste it into your clipboard or wherever you want to paste it, and just hang on to that. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is when you go to paste it down, you'll use the execute code module, yeah. And when you like fresh load into a server, this is all going to be blank. You would just paste in whatever that code was that you copied before. Mode local is fine, and just hit OK, and it'll paste down everything in that AO that you copied that was in that code. You do have to make sure that everything is in Zeus. So, oh yeah, I forgot I fucking moved a bunch. Where are we at? Here. So like this stuff here that I don't have in Zeus right now, you got to make sure you add this stuff back into Zeus. So it'll be in that code, but it'll place all of these objects down exactly where they were. It'll place down all the vehicles and stuff like that exactly where they were. The only downside is any enemy AI or any AI that you had garrisoned will no longer be garrisoned. It'll just drop the group. So like if I had, the platoon worth of guys sitting in here, it would just drop the group in one gigantic platoon fucking wedge. and you'd have to go through and garrison those guys all over again. So that's kind of a pain in the dick, but it's better than having to rebuild the entire goddamn thing. You get all of your objects and everything placed down. All you got to do is garrison guys again. It does save patrols for whatever reason. So if you had patrols moving around, it'll still have those patrols moving. It just won't save guys that are garrisoned. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, obviously there's a bunch of modules here that we'll use some of, whether it be set date. If that's one that people don't realize a lot, is ArmA does actually model full lunar cycles. So if you're doing a nighttime operation and you want it to be really dark, then you'll want to go into set date and you'll pick a date that has the least amount of moon. Or if you want a full moon, you'll go to like here on the 29th where it says it's got a full moon on the 29th. You'll hit that. And when you make it night, you'll have the maximum amount of moonlight that you can have because there's a full moon. So that set date does come into play sometimes. If, like I said, we're doing a night operation, but we want it kind of bright where it's on that border of if you really need NVGs or not, then we'll set the date to something else on the server to make it a full moon. Skip time, obviously, whether you want to set it day or night. Time acceleration is another thing that we'll use. If we want a very specific look for the start of a mission, if we want it very early morning, like 04:30 or something like that, where the sun's just starting to come up, it's kind of dark enough to have NVGs, but not really, then we'll use that time acceleration while we're building everything, and while everybody's loading in, we'll put down the time acceleration module and drop that to 0. So basically it pauses time and it won't get any lighter out. And then once it's time for everybody to step off and basically the mission to start, you just double click that module again, crank it back up to 1x, and then time will resume like normal. Downside to that is, if you forget about the time acceleration and leave it at 0, our Blue Force tracker works off of in-game time. So if you forget that, you'll generally end up getting a message from Task Force Commander or Platoon HQ going, hey, turn the time acceleration back on, because all of our Blue Force tracker markers have the same fucking numbers. Ask me how I know. Done it a lot.
How do you know?
I've done it a lot.
Oh, that was climactic.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the other modules, I mean, they're all pretty self-explanatory for what they do. The fire support stuff, the artillery fire missions and stuff, I never use those. Honestly, even when I'm solo, I still prefer to use the actual artillery computer because I have a lot of practice with it. I know what to do with it and so on and so forth. And like I said, the only thing I'll use in there really is the 82 millimeter mortar module for the Michael Bay shit, just making things look cool, basically. The suppressive fire thing in here, I always recommend not using the suppressive fire module in the fire support module. The reason being, if I were to take these guys, well, actually, these guys aren't a good example, but if I had a fixed gun emplacement, so say I had a cord sitting out here, we'll grab one real quick. And we'll go with a short one. Okay, so this cord, say I want it to suppress that area. So I'd put down my target, suppressive fire, suppress target alpha, stance crouch is fine, it doesn't matter. Automatic, duration 20. So he's going to fire fully automatic at that target that I placed out there for 20 seconds. Okay, so the downside to this being, all right, now he's firing in that area, suppressing, right? Now he gets shot. Oh, actually, I think they might have fixed it. They did fix it. He stopped shooting. Holy shit. Heckman, this is a revelation.
Yeah, I talked to my guy at Bohemia, and he fixed some code.
Oh, thank you so much.
But carry on.
So it used to be when someone was out on a mounted gun like this, basically, if they had a suppress module on them, and they were currently firing, if you shot the person off of the gun would continue firing. Even though the guy was dead, it would keep shooting. Now, the other downside was that it doesn't use any ammo. So technically, you could have this gun suppress fucking forever. Whether or not that's fixed, I'm not sure. But that is why I prefer to use the ACE suppression module, which is going to be in here under ACE AI suppressive fire. So you click on that and then you just drag to, or really just mouse over the area you want them to fire, and then left click, and they'll start firing. And it does actually use ammo. They'll have to reload, so on and so forth. So I'm still partial to the ACE AI one, even though it seems like the fire support one seems a little bit fixed. I still like the ACE AI one more.
Question: if you do the ACE AI, then you put a will he adjust to accurately fire if there's an enemy in his viewpoint?
Yeah.
Or will he continue to suppress?
No. If there's if say I put the suppressive fire out there in that area where he's at, and somebody came out of cover behind that building at his 12:30, 1 o'clock, he would turn and engage that target.
Okay. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I much prefer the ACE AI one. And then in terms of diver, what you're asking in terms of snapshotting, no, I don't really use the snapshot feature to bounce back and forth between positions because it's just as quick for me to go to the map and just do that. So I don't really use that feature. Yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of setting up a mission. I could go through every single one of these modules with you guys, and that would take obviously a whole lot more time. The vast majority of stuff in here is just quality of life type things that we'll do. It's majority of the time doesn't really have all that much effect on the mission itself, aside from the stuff in the AI behavior like garrisoning and ungarrison and stuff like that. But a lot of the other tertiary shit, animals and audio and building stuff and fire support and all of that, we don't really use much at all. Players will use, are you now having them fucking,
yeah.
Okay.
He didn't just suddenly develop a mind of his
I was like, what the fuck? Players, will use that obviously to teleport, and that's the only thing we ever use that for, or create teleporter. Reinforcements is a good way to bring in reinforcements, provided you're using a non-custom faction. The reinforcements thing, we wouldn't be able to use this with our custom faction. It doesn't like it. It'll spawn whatever faction that custom faction is built off of. So if say our militia, it's not, but say our militia was based off of Russian VDV troops, if you put down that militia to spawn in reinforcements, it'll actually spawn in Russian VDV instead of our custom faction. So we don't really use that at all. Same with the respawn and scenario flow and spawn stuff. We don't really use too often. The spawn I will use at times to create a smoke screen for the AI, like they had mortars send out a smoke screen. Then I'll use that. But that's pretty much it in terms of setting up a mission and thought process behind things, how I will build up a fortified area, the things that I look at in terms of when I'm placing troops into it, looking at the objects, taking care of the object count, where the AI are looking, whether they're going to be clipping through walls, so on and so forth. Convoy type stuff, like I said, ambush is fairly simple, but you have to have the right terrain for it. You can't just do an ambush out in the open like this. That right there that you're looking at, that Heckman just spawned, the consistent smoke pillar, if you would like to destroy everyone's frames, that is a good way to do it, especially if you use multiple ones. It's cool to see, provided you have about 20 people in the server. If you have 60, no. There's been a couple operations that I've been in where, you know, I load into the server and look out and see those smoke pillars rising up into the air, and I instantly message Zeus and tell him to get the fuck rid of them. Because the closer and closer you get to them, the worse and worse your frames are going to be, and the vast majority of the time, they end up being in the center of a large fucking town, which is already going to be issues for frames. So yeah, they look cool, they just suck. But I think that's it, unless any of you guys in chat have any other questions, or if Heckman, you have any other questions on how to do different shit. And also, while I'm at it, Drago, thank you a ton, bud, for that 10 spot. Greatly appreciated. What about you, Heckman?
No, I mean, I already know all this stuff, so.
Well, yeah, of course.
I mean, so, but no, this has been super helpful, so I appreciate it. And I'll definitely pick your brain as I think of more stuff, because that Convoy one is super snazzy. I like that.
That's a lot of trial and fucking error. Oh my god. I mean, I've been Zeusing for a little over 3 years.
Here we go.
No, I've been Zeusing for a little over 3 years, and I didn't figure out how to do it that well until about a year ago when we were doing Crimson Moon. And I was able to figure out how to set up a convoy like that. It was a fucking pain in the dick to figure out how to get it to work smoothly. And even then, it'll still fuck up. Sure, Drum's probably got something he would like to add.
Aliens.
Yes, aliens. Did you see the little bomb defusal bot that they're adding in?
Yes.
That's a submarine.
But aliens.
There's also a new off-road variant that I've seen with an actual hard top fucking topper and some lights and shit on it that looked really cool.
Yeah, but aliens.
Are you doing the crazy hair guy right now? Like, you have your hands up in the air
Yes.
doing jazz hands, don't you?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And also there's a new terrain that's being released with it. And I guess if you pre-order now, you can check out the terrain now. Is that right, Heckman? While you're playing around with the submarine?
I'm not. I've literally spawned it, and it's just doing.
It's
what
just dancing.
Doing. It's just doing. I wish I could get my jig to move like that. I'd catch so many bass. Yeah. According to Steam, yeah, it says if you pre-order now, you get you can try out the new terrain early as of now, is what it says.
Huh. Yeah, I'm gonna probably have to fucking check that out.
Heckman.
And like I told you guys earlier, we will be giving away some copies of that expansion on the channel over the next couple months. Probably we'll end up giving away quite a few copies of it.
Heckman.
Did you do that?
I
Heckman.
did not. That was on its own.
Heckman.
Yes, Capitan.
Your submarine. It flew away.
Yeah.
I see.
It's not yellow. I'm unsure as to why it's flying.
Oh, there we go. It's good.
All right, so I guess we'll wrap it up here. So that's gonna be it for this one, guys. Again, hopefully you guys were able to learn something from this and at least get a little bit of a peek into the mindset as to what it is to Zeus, at least for me, and the thought process that I have for, you know, Zeusing, at least at a task force level. Obviously, again, things are going to be a little bit different when you only have 20 people or so. But yeah, hopefully this, like I said, you guys were able to learn some from this. And as always, if you have questions, feel free to ask. But that's going to wrap it up for tonight, guys. I do have a planning meeting to get to. And yeah, I will see all of you later.